Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Todd Klindt's SharePoint Netcast number 173, recorded live October 14th, 2013. I'm your host and game MVP, Todd Klindt. All of this would not be possible without the love and support of those fine folks at Rackspace. So if you get bored and you've already downloaded all the recipes for meatloaf you can think of and all that kind of stuff off the internet, browse on over to sharepoint.rackspace.com and see what we got going on over there. We've got some free SharePoint training and videos and things like that. All kinds of great SharePoint stuff, information on classes, products, all that stuff at sharepoint.rackspace.com. Find out all about it. And every time somebody goes to sharepoint.rackspace.com, Rackspace comes a little farther away from, cutting, canceling my netcast. It's not so much they don't, in this industry, they don't cancel you. They just don't renew your netcast. It's all very nuanced. But every time you click that, it just makes this thing that much better. So go ahead and go to sharepoint.rackspace.com. And if you get the little chat window because you're bored, that kind of stuff, tell them I sent you. Tell them what a great guy I am. Don't be afraid to embellish a little bit. They don't mind that at all. But go ahead and do that. So the first part here, the production notes, and I know this will absolutely jinx everything, but the production notes have been going pretty well lately. The sound's been going well. I've made a bunch of changes. The sound's been going well. Right now I've got the microphone sitting on a couple of books, so it's up and close to my mouth, and it's not getting the noise off the desk. I don't have the microphone going through a hub. Everything's going well. Just haven't had a lot of the hardware problems that I've had in the past. Did forget to put the times in the YouTube post for 172, but I took care of that today. So you can click those. As always, the YouTube versions of this get updated first, and so that's the best place if you want to subscribe to my channel. It's youtube.com/ToddKlindtNetcast, and then whenever it shows up, it'll show up when you go to YouTube. YouTube, turns out those guys have a pretty decent video platform. Who knew? I don't know where these guys came from. So that's been kind of my go-to place. I'm really enjoying that. But as always, you can go to SharePoint, or not. You can go to www.toddklindt.com/netcast and join in the chat room, that kind of stuff. And I've got links. I need to figure out how I want to set that page up so that like you can see the current netcast, just play it, and then some of the old ones, but also have the chat room and the streaming in there. That seems to have worked out pretty well. We get a lot of people streaming and a lot of people joining the chat room from that link. So I just need to figure out how I want to format that page to put it all in there. But that's the great way to get in there. And like I said, the production seems to be going pretty well. So that's all good. All right, now for the topics, I want to let y'all know I've got a lot of topics tonight. I hope you're seated with your seat backs up and you're properly belted in, because we got a lot of stuff to talk about tonight, and also there's a whole bunch of stuff that I'll talk about next week, stuff that just didn't get finished tonight, and so just a lot of great stuff. I'm going to try to get through it as quickly but succinctly as I can. The very first one that I want to talk about is a blog post that I saw come across today, and this was a good one. This one has come up before. This is a post by Corey Roth over at .NET Mafia, and this is a way to get all of the search results in your index. And while this seems like a really silly thing to look for, because a decent-sized farm might have a million things in the index, it's a really great troubleshooting tip or technique. So you want to log in with an account that has permissions, because Corey's technique does continue to do security trimming, and basically you just put an asterisk in your query string and it just returns everything. But it's great for troubleshooting. It's not very applicable for regular stuff, but it's good for testing out things like security trimming, and it's good for just making sure the search is working correctly. Last week I talked a little bit about a problem where you could do a search query and get no results. So this is one way to make sure you're searching for something that actually, you're actually getting that part, that you're not searching for something that just doesn't exist. So in the past, that was a good search testing technique. Corey even goes ahead. Corey's kind of a developer, so he does some of this REST stuff, and he even shows you how to do it with REST in there if you want to get that back. So again, a great troubleshooting technique. I'm glad that he posted that. Corey's got a lot of good posts. He gets into the nuts and bolts and stuff a lot, and I like that. And but this is just good if you're troubleshooting search, want to make sure that things are set up correctly, testing permissions, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, just put an asterisk in your query box and bloop, everything comes up. So speaking of search, and hopefully I will have an updated chapter to this story next week, but I had a customer who their search service app was very sad, very sad. And we tried a number of things, but one of the things that had happened in the past is before I got on the scene, they thought, search was very sad, and search was really the only part of SharePoint that was sad. And so they thought, well, this is easy. We will just delete our search service application, recreate a new one, not much to it. And they did that, and they deleted their old one. They created their new one. And then they realized that they had previously had a lot of managed properties defined, and a lot of those were maps to crawled properties. And when they deleted their old search service application, all that stuff went bye-bye. So they manually, basically what they did was talk to a bunch of the business folks and said, when you do these searches here, because they had a bunch of search-driven web parts and things like that, they're like, let us know what doesn't work. And they spent like a week coming up with this list again. And so we had to go do some other stuff on their search service app. And they said, are you going to delete this? Because we didn't document any of this stuff and we don't know how to recreate it. And I said, yeah, no problem. So I'd never actually done this before, but how hard could it be, right? And so I remembered, and this was one of the great things about this Netcast, is I've got all of my Netcasts in OneNote. So every one of them, all 173 of them. So every topic I talk about, every link that I share with you guys, I have in one repository, and it is super fantastic. And I remember sometime a while back talking about some Codeplex project where somebody, or a web part or something, somebody had published something about exporting search settings and importing them to migrate search. So I get into OneNote, my fingers do their walking, and I find this page. So I looked at the thing, and it didn't specifically call out managed properties. And so I thought, well, this might do it. I mean, this thing clearly didn't list every single thing that it pulled out, but I don't want to spend a bunch of time fighting this and figuring it out and going through it and find out it doesn't have the thing that we want. So what did I do? And it's too bad Teresa left. I fired up PowerShell. And so I told the customer, I'm like, I've never done this before. I've never researched this before. You're gonna learn right along with me. So I knew that the managed properties were the things that he was looking for. So I did the old Get Enterprise Search Service application, grabbed that. This was for SharePoint 2010. I'm mostly sure it works the same for SharePoint 2013. Yeah, because actually when I checked my notes tonight, I did in SharePoint 2013. So got an object for my search service application, and then just did a get command *managed*. So really what I wanted was all of the commandlets that had the word managed in it. Now, there were a bunch that I didn't care about, things like managed accounts, that kind of stuff. But lo and behold, there it was, a whole family of PowerShell commandlets whose noun was SP Enterprise Search Metadata Managed Property. That was the good stuff right there. So there was get and there was set and new and all that kind of stuff. So I was able to do a get SP Enterprise Search Managed Metadata Property and pass it my search service application, and it gave me all the managed properties. Well, I didn't care about the managed properties that were out of the box because I knew when I recreated search, it would all those would all show up. So with a little bit of poking around, and I haven't done a lot with managed properties in search, so I didn't know a lot of the little nuances of it. But it looked like so every managed property had a property ID or a PID, and it looked like the custom ones that this customer had made were all had a PID of 400 or 500, between 400 and 500. So playing with PowerShell a little bit, because PowerShell, is awesome. I was able to figure out a little commandlet that would give me all of the managed properties. And for the benefit of the people in the chat room, I will, because I just had a PowerShell guy pop in, so I feel I need to earn his respect by posting some not completely pathetic PowerShell. I was able to get a list of all of the managed properties that they had. So basically I piped it through where object, and I did a crazy thing here. My old friend where object, I said I want all the ones where the PID is greater than 399, because I wanted 400 and up, and all of the ones that are less than 500, and I built that all into one big where thing. That's right. I was that one's going up on the fridge. I was pretty proud of that one. And then pipe that all through sort object and sorted by the PID property, and that listed all of their managed properties. And at this point, the customer was just amazed at my PowerShell prowess, which just goes to show that he hasn't played much with PowerShell. But then he remembered that those managed properties were mapped to crawl properties. And so we needed to figure out that mapping. And I said, well, that can't be tough at all. So I went back to the old well, and I said, get command star dot star mapping star. And that gave me the get SP enterprise search metadata mapping commandlet. And so I was able to do that. And that, every one of those mappings has a managed PID. And that managed PID is the property ID of the previous commandlet. So I was able to map those all together. Now, I didn't script rebuilding them because we were actually in there to look at something else. But with those two commandlets, I was able to just pipe them all through out file, get them in a text file, and then we had it all documented for when we rebuild search. So that story has some other things. Again, I was in there to actually troubleshoot something else. Hopefully we'll have that whole story for you next week. I still got to do some research on that. But the exciting conclusion to this story will hopefully be next week, and I'll talk about what we had to do. But that was another one of those things where the customer said, hey, is there a way to do X? And my immediate answer was, well, I'm sure I can do it with PowerShell. And turns out I could. So that's another good story. Don't doubt the power of PowerShell, and hopefully that will show up as a blog post somewhere once I get that all sorted out. Here's another one, and this is a good follow-up to a story that I did in Netcast 171. For those of you who studiously watch and listen and study all of my Netcasts, my hat's off to you. But you'll remember in way back, it feels like it was months ago, in Netcast 171, I talked about how you could drop an app offline file into IIS to give you that under maintenance or whatever page in SharePoint without having to do a bunch of who's and what's it with DNS and setting up IIS to do something else, all that jazz. You could just drop that app underline offline.htm file into the directory, and then whatever you had there would just work. So have used that. That is pretty good stuff. To expand on that, and this is something that I ran across the last couple of days, we've seen in SharePoint 2013, like if you've got a SharePoint site collections in SharePoint 2010 mode, you get that little red bar across the top that says, you can upgrade this. What I think the real genesis of that particular piece of feature was that, as we all know, Central Admin just doesn't look right unless it has the red bar across the top. I mean, yellow bar is okay, but the red bar is really where it's at. If you go into Central Admin and there's not a red bar across the top, you sort of feel like something's not right. You sort of feel like maybe something's not set up right, or your farm's not, you just really get worried. And so I think SharePoint administrators were telling all their SharePoint users about this awesome red bar in Central Admin, and the users are like, well, I want a red bar too. Why do they get a red bar? I want a red bar. And so now the users have a red bar too. So we can use that red bar for maintenance things. Like I said, the most common usage of it is if you can upgrade your SharePoint 2010 site collection. If you log into it as a site collection administrator, you can click that. You can do the preview demo thing or upgrade it or whatever. But you can also use it for maintenance windows. So built into the object model for content databases is this ability to do a maintenance window notification in that red bar. And so like Doug in the chat room, and Doug's a developer, so this is This is how he knows these things. Sadly, that red bar is not very customizable. Like when I first saw this blog post, I had great visions of doing all kinds of fun, nasty things with that red bar. Turns out you really can't do much. It's pretty rigid. But what you can do is put notifications about maintenance in there. And so there are just a few settings, like you can say, you know, a maintenance warning, or maintenance is scheduled. It's going to be this day, it's going to be this time, whatever. But it's pretty slick. If you're going to be doing maintenance, you can do that, and you can even put like the more info link and link them to maybe if you've got an internal website that says, you know, SharePoint's going to be down Saturday night from 11 o'clock till Sunday morning at 6. Here's what we're doing. You can even put that link in that maintenance thing. And how do you do it all? PowerShell, of course. And so there's some pretty straightforward but sort of silly PowerShell. And it's linked in that blog post on MSDN. But I tried it out. It works exactly the way that you would think that it does. It's weird that it's scoped at the site collection level, or excuse me, at the content database level, not at the site collection level. But again, like most things in SharePoint 2013, if it doesn't quite make sense, ask yourself, how would they take advantage of this in Office 365? And then you're like, oh yeah, they do everything. They move site content databases around. So that's really what it's for. Like if you're going to be moving, you know, content databases to a new farm, doing upgrades, things like that. But it's just another one of the things to have in your pocket, because you know, if you're doing stuff like Jeff in the chat room says, SQL database maintenance, that kind of stuff, you want to have change management. Your structure management is going to want to be sending stuff out to users. So this is just one of those things when they say, hey, is there any way we can alert the users 12 hours ahead of time this is going to happen? You can say, yeah, that dummy that does the Netcast talked about a way to do that. You can bring this up. You can look like a hero. Just another one of the tools to have in your cap. Now, the way that I actually saw this was not the original blog post on how to do it with PowerShell, but some guy wrote a wrapper that does it in Central Admin. So he wrote a page in Central Admin where you set all this stuff up. He apparently has not heard about how cool PowerShell is and how when you use PowerShell it makes you a better person. He wanted to put it in the UI. You know, I'm probably not going to judge either way, but I know that when I take this to my my management folks, it's going to be all PowerShell. But that was a pretty cool one. Like Doug, I was a little disappointed in how inflexible it was, but it still has its place. So another thing that I saw in the last week is that SQL 2014 CTP1 is out as of last week. So that is the consumer tech preview. That's kind of like the beta of the next version of SQL. Now, before anybody asks, does SharePoint 2013 support this? Does SharePoint 2010 support this? Microsoft doesn't often come out and admit support for a product that's not RTM. So they're probably not going to come out and say SharePoint 2013 is officially supported on this beta. But it is out. It's a good idea. Get that out there. Kick the tires. See what's new. I've been playing with it since the previous beta that came out in June, I think. Seems pretty solid. A few little differences, but nothing crazy. But if you're like me and just like having stuff to play with and tinker with, that's one of the good ones. Now, something that oddly did not find its way into my notes, which I'm kind of embarrassed about, is... Yeah, and like DMJ in the chat room is saying, now is the time to play with it and figure out things before you have to put it into production. The October cumulative updates have come out, and why this is not in my notes, I can't even begin to imagine. But for SharePoint 2010, they are out, and that puts your SharePoint 2010 farms at 14.0.7110. And that is a post Service Pack 2 cumulative upgrade, and it requires either Service Pack 1 or Service Pack 2 if you want to install it. Service Pack 2 has been out for a while, and I think for the most part is fairly stable. I haven't heard a lot of horror stories about it. If I do have any horror stories about it, you can read about them at toddklindt.com/SP2010builds. And you can also follow that on Twitter at SP2010patches. Why I didn't use builds in both of them, I will never know. But there's a few things in there. There's that whole the content editor web part thing in Service Pack 2. I haven't tested that with the October cumulative update yet. But that's for SharePoint 2010. The October 2013 cumulative update is out. For SharePoint 2013, the October 2013 cumulative update is sort of out. The last time I checked, they only had the patch for Foundation out. They don't have the patches for server or project. So when those get out, I will post those. Hean in the chat room is saying that he's got regressions for those already. So if you've got regressions, let me know, and I'll make you famous. I'll add you on my my wiki and let you know what problems I see. Because I do like to kind of keep an eye on that. People always, since I maintain the patch page, people are always, hey, should I install this patch? Well, it's folks like you and Hean, hint, hint, letting me know what problems they've seen in the field, and then if I can reproduce it, I'll throw it out there. So I apologize for that. That wasn't in my notes, and I have no idea why it wasn't. That was bad Netcast note maker. Put that in there right now. So this is one, our very own Joanne Klein, who's in the chat room right now, posted a good question on Twitter over the weekend, I think. I can't remember when it was, but her and Ken Price and I kind of chatted about this. Joanne's question was if there was any documentation on specifically what you should do if you were virtualizing SQL for SharePoint. Now, this is something that has been near and, well, not dear necessarily, to my heart since SharePoint 2007, probably when virtualization really got to be big. And it's all about virtualizing SQL. Now, I've said before that anybody can virtualize SQL. Very few people can virtualize SQL well. And all of your performance in SharePoint is throttled by SQL. You can't over-engineer SharePoint to get around bad SQL. And when you virtualize SQL, it's really easy to do it poorly so that it performs badly. So Joanne was just looking for some guidance. We got a couple of really great links from, like I said, Ken Price, linked a white paper on virtualization with SharePoint 2013, covers the different roles and what you need to do if you're going to virtualize them. Another interesting thing was a video that I have been talking about forever, because it's just that good, is Brent Ozar's SQL MCM readiness video on virtualization. This has been my go-to video on virtualizing SQL for years now, and so when this conversation came up, I immediately ran into my notes and pasted that in, and then took a look at it again, because it is just a fine video. The Oscar committee really missed out on not giving that one a better award, but started watching it again and had forgotten, but he wrote that or recorded that on SQL 2008, I believe. And so I thought, well, that's been a couple of years since that came out. So I talked to Brent and I said, hey, I realize you're a pretty busy guy. You got this SQL business consulting company and you're pretty good, so you're in pretty high demand. So I know you're not sitting around looking for stuff to do, but if you got bored and recorded a updated version of that video, that would be awesome. And either because he's lazy or just because it's the truth, he said, well, there's really not much that has changed. He said that not a lot had changed between SQL 2008 and SQL 2012 when it came to virtualization, and not a lot has changed in just the virtualization hypervisors. A little bit has, but not a lot. And so he said that video is still pretty applicable. Now, again, if you guys know Brent, he's kind of a jokester, so he may have said that just because he doesn't want to do another video. But I trust him. He's a pretty straightforward guy. But if you're going to do any kind of virtualization of SQL, whether it be for SharePoint or not, because Brent's a SQL guy. I don't know that the word SharePoint exists in that video at all. Sit down, watch that video. It's like 75 minutes. It is gold. It is absolutely perfect. It's just a great resource for if you're going to be doing any SQL virtualization. Brings up all kinds of things you would never consider. So I guess the moral of the story is virtualization is here to stay. Whereas 3 or 4 years ago I could get away with telling people not to virtualize SQL, in reality that's just not viable anymore. Nobody listens to me when I say that. So if you are going to virtualize SQL, be responsible about it. Do your homework. Watch Brent Ozar's video. Read that white paper. Just do some research. I think both Hyper-V and virtualization, Hyper-V and VMware have white papers and guidance on the best ways to virtualize SQL. Make yourself familiar with those as well. I think you'll appreciate it in the long run. Yeah, and so Doug in the chat room is talking about one of the things, and this is kind of the big thing. Virtualized SQL gives you some enhanced DR opportunities. So Doug is virtualizing his failover server, which is a good idea. The other thing, and Brent talks about it in his video, is if you have SQL virtualized, then you can use that for DR. You can use, if you've got something like vMotion or System Center that automatically shuffles workloads around, you can shuffle SQL around if the hypervisors, die in, that kind of stuff. So there are some advantages to it, but man, I just think the performance penalty is scary stuff. While we're talking about things that aren't SharePoint, I wanted to mention that I think this week is the week that Windows 8.1 comes out, even though we're all running it everywhere and all that kind of stuff. I think it officially comes out the 17th or the 18th. And Microsoft once again has published a free ebook on Windows 8.1 written by some guy named Ed Bott. What does that guy know about Windows anyway? But Ed has put this book out on Windows 8.1. It's not like a deep dive. It's not a nuts and bolts sort of thing, but it's geared towards IT pros, and it's geared towards IT pros that are going to be upgrading to Windows 8.1 in the enterprise. So there's some good stuff in it. I haven't read it cover to cover yet. I'm in the middle of a Jack Reacher novel right now. I just can't pull myself away. But once that one's done, I'll probably crack this book open and just kind of see what it's got, because I've been putting 8.1 on everything in my house. My tablets have it. I got a couple of laptops that have it. Trying to get it on my toaster. That's not working so well, but I haven't given up yet. But that's out there. So grab that. It's free. And it's got you got different versions, I believe, for your different. So right now they've only got the PDF version, but the Mobi, the Kindle version, and the EPUB are coming soon. Having self-published a book, I can tell you that it's not as easy as going into whatever your authoring software is and say, spit out a PDF, now spit out a Mobi, now spit out an EPUB. It's not that easy. So I'm sure within a short amount of time they'll have something out there. But grab that if you're Windows 8.1 curious. And while we're talking about more things that are not SharePoint, late last week, so since last week's Netcast, Microsoft released GDR2 for Windows Phone. And GDR is Global Distribution Release or something. It's a service pack, it's a patch, it's a whatever. And if you've got a Windows Phone like a Lumia or something like that, you can do the whole check update and you get GDR2. Now, Microsoft has been pretty clear that there was a bunch of stuff that hadn't come out yet and that there absolutely would be a GDR3. They weren't real clear when this came out, when you'd be able to get this. Turns out today is the day that you can get GDR3. So there's a couple of ways that you can do it. In the chat room that I linked a blog post from Paul Thurrott at winsupersite.com talking about how to update your Windows Phone to GDR3. There's a couple of ways you can do it. Basically, what they've done is they've made GDR3 available to Windows Phone developers. And so if there's any way you can justify calling yourself a Windows Phone developer, there's a couple of paths that you can go through to get that. But once you do that, then you can download an app to your phone, which essentially authorizes you for getting GDR3. So I have recently switched over to a Lumia 920 this little shiny devil right here on AT&T. And so for GDR2, I was able to get that last week and had no problems with that for the 4 days that I ran it before getting GDR3 today. Now, the way that I got GDR3 was a long time ago. I signed up for that Windows Phone app dev, quick app dev thing. It kind of walked you through a wizard so you could write Windows Phone apps. So I had designs on writing some sort of Netcast app so you could bring up all my Netcasts and all that. But anyway, I was in the system, and so I signed into the site. It saw that I was cleared for that, and I downloaded the app, and I assumed that it took that app away since I ran it. Nope. So if you look on here, there's this app here, Preview for Developers. I ran that. It flipped a bit on the phone, and then I just did a check for updates and did the update to GDR3, and that took 25 minutes maybe, and it's all good to go. Now, on a sort of related note, again, I just switched over to using a Windows Phone here about a week ago, well, actually over the weekend. So I used to be an Android guy, and so this will be kind of a fun thing. You'll probably be hearing some more on the Netcast about that. But it's not a bad platform. Again, I'm only like 4 days in, but I like it so far. My Android is starting to give me some fits, but this has been pretty good. So, and if you want to get a Windows Phone and you want to play with it, but you don't want to commit to it, you've got a couple of options. You can go out and get the Lumia 520. This is the 920. But the 520, which is a smaller version of this, is like $100 on Amazon unlocked. So go out to Amazon, get you a Lumia 520, which you can download this GDR2 and 3 for. And then what I did was I have AT&T, so my Android phone had a full-size SIM, so it was as big as a house, something like that. The Lumias and most phones these days have micro SIMs in them, which are much smaller. And so what you can do, and it almost defies logic, and it seems like it won't work, but in a full-size SIM, the actual important part, the memory part, is the same size as the micro SIM. So they make little presses that you can just put your full-sized SIM in and just crunch it, and it crunches out a micro SIM sized SIM. So I just went to the local AT&T store and told them what I wanted to do, and they had one of those presses, and they took my regular SIM, popped it, and I just stuck it right in the 920, rebooted it, and it was fine. So if you have an AT&T phone, again, you can go out and get a 520 on Amazon for $100, and then go to your AT&T store, have them snap out that micro SIM, and you can just jump right over to it. It was pretty painless. So in the chat room, Mark Gam, because there are many Marks in the chat room, and is asking if I'm an official developer now. I don't think so, and if I was, I'd have a lot of hungry children, and I think that any developer within the sound of my voice should be offended at the idea that I would also call myself a developer. My chops are not so good. But we got a couple people in the chat room here. They got the 520s and all that. So it's just a great, so another thing about the 520, and I only got the 920 because I knew somebody was trying to sell it, and they made me a good deal on it. But the 520 has a couple of great features. So it's Lumia. It's got the Nokia, it's made by Nokia. So it's got a bunch of Nokia apps on it. So here's a couple of things that are super cool. The Nokia maps, the travel maps, allow you easily to download maps for offline use. So before I got my SIM and switched everything over, I went to Sweden and Finland here a couple of weeks ago. So while I was in the States on Wi-Fi, I went to the Here app, which is their navigation app, and just said, make Sweden and Finland available offline. It just pulled the maps down, stored them on my phone. So when I went over to Sweden and Finland, I didn't have network access, internet access, but the GPS in the phone worked fine, and I could absolutely navigate around. We got lost in Helsinki. I pulled it up. It worked like a champ, so that was cool. The other cool thing is there's a translation app, Windows, it's Bing translation, all that. You can also download the language packs for that for offline translation. And one of the great things about the Bing translator is you hold it up and it uses your phone's camera, and if you point it at something, it will translate it on the fly and superimpose English over top of the Swedish words, which is what I did it for. So I downloaded the Swedish language pack with this phone. Again, didn't have any network access. And then as I was looking at things, looking at menus or looking at signs, if the camera could see it, the app would do it. And again, it was all offline. So you can play with it without actually, using it with your phone. The other thing is the music apps and all that are great. The camera, I don't know about the camera on the 520, but the camera on the 920 is spectacular. We've got a dedicated phone button up here, so you end up taking pictures like this instead of like this, because everybody hates those vertical pictures. And it's just, you can do things like if you hold down the camera button while the thing is locked, it will bring you up to the camera. You don't have to unlock the screen if you use the built-in app. So there's just all kinds of great things you can do with that 520. Even without having your regular network access. Now, one thing that I did is I went out and bought a AT&T Go pay-as-you-go SIM, and I used that with the phone for like a month before I switched over, so I could try the calls and all that kind of stuff. But man, Windows Phone gets made a lot of fun of, and some of it's kind of earned. But you can get a 520 for $100 and try it out. It's not so bad. All right, so that was all the topics. I apologize for all of the wandering topics on that. Now we'll go to everybody's favorite part of the Netcast, the shameless self-promotion. I need a theme song for that. I need to talk to some people about that. It was brought to my attention that last week there was a great travesty during the Netcast, specifically during the shameless self-promotion part. I did not shamelessly promote Professional SharePoint 2013 administration, a wrong that I hope to right tonight. So you can go out and grab this. You can grab it on Amazon by searching for my name, I think, or, well, let's just try it. Last I checked, if you went to Amazon and just did a search for SharePoint 2013, it was the first book that went out in your results list. Let's see this, SharePoint 20, that's not how you spell SharePoint 2013. Oh, and it is. How lovely. Yeah, so if you just go to Amazon and type SharePoint 2013, it bubbles to the top. And also, if you go to toddklindt.com/pro-sp2013admin, you'll find all about how great this book is. And if you want to order an autographed copy from me, there's a link on there how to do that. So buy that, buy one, buy all. Halloween's coming up. Little known fact, little kids love tech books, so buy some of those to go Halloween. Thanksgiving's coming up. Have a few of those sitting around. Thanksgiving when the families get together. Christmas, that one's obvious. These things make great stocking stuffers. So do all that kind of stuff. But go out and buy you some copies of that. You won't regret it. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is... and again, it's too bad Teresa's not here. So a couple of weeks ago, I had a Hey Scripting Guy, or had a blog post posted on Hey Scripting Guy. That was super cool, and had a lot of fun with that. And so I talked to Ed Wilson, the scripting guy, and I said, hey, Ed, I've got all kinds of great ideas for other PowerShell blog posts. And he said, well, send me one, and if it doesn't stink, I'll post it. So I sent him one, and it didn't stink. So I'm going to have another one. And so on November 9th, on the Hey Scripting Guy blog, there's going to be another blog post from yours truly. I'm not going to tell you what it's about. It is a good one. I previewed it with my coworkers last week. I sent it out. We all send each other PowerShell scripts on Fridays, and a whole bunch of them were really impressed with it, and they loved it. And so, so look forward to that. Speaking of PowerShell, so this is something I don't do very often. I don't normally promote conferences and stuff that I'm not going to be at. But PowerShell Saturday, they do that. We've got the SharePoint Saturdays and the SQL Saturdays. They got the PowerShell Saturdays. There's going to be a PowerShell Saturday in Atlanta on October 26th. Now, I've never tried to speak at a PowerShell Saturday. I can't even imagine they would let a poser like me through the door. But I would like to go to one sometime, but I can't because October 26th is my anniversary. So if you would like to give me a good anniversary present, go to Atlanta, go to PowerShell Saturday, tell them all hi. One of the folks in the chat room, Ian, he'll be speaking there. He's going to be presenting. We have a celebrity in the chat room. So if you go to PowerShell Saturday.com/005, that would be cool. The PowerShell community is great. SharePoint community is pretty good. I'm a big fan. PowerShell community is also pretty good. The folks there are very welcoming. In the SharePoint community, so as I was talking to my customer on Friday and I was doing the whole mapping thing with PowerShell, he's like, wow, you know a lot about PowerShell. And I'm like, well, my success in SharePoint and PowerShell is all dependent on the phrase, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. So I don't know a lot about PowerShell, but I knew more about PowerShell than he did. Therefore, I look like an expert. So the problem with that is, while I look like a PowerShell expert to people that don't do PowerShell, to people that do PowerShell, well, see, I'm not very smart. But despite all that, and despite the fact that every time I open my mouth, I reinforce that, the people in the PowerShell community have been incredibly friendly, incredibly open, and so you can do a lot worse than getting involved with the PowerShell community. SharePoint Jack says he's thinking about having a PowerShell Saturday in Chicago. I think we should all pester SharePoint Jack and make him do that. So if you're bored on October 26th, which apparently is a Saturday, go to PowerShell Saturday in Atlanta. If you are bored next year, round about SharePoint conference time, you should go to the SharePoint conference pre-cons. I'm going to be doing one of them. It's going to be on installing SharePoint. And that will be Sunday, March 2nd. It's going to be in Las Vegas at the Venetian. And while you're there, just stay for the whole SharePoint conference. The SharePoint conference is March 3rd through the 6th. My little piece of that is on Sunday beforehand. Shane and I are doing a deployment and administration end-to-end. Oh, they've got prices up now. So the price for that is $400, and that's on top of, your SharePoint conference price. But for $400, you get Shane and I from 8 to 5 all day on Sunday. All the bad jokes you can stand, all of me making fun of Shane, all that kind of stuff. So you can sign up for that at SharePointConference.com, and then it's under the agenda stuff. So that will be a good time. And then finally in April, a couple months after that, after we have all recovered from the SharePoint conference, I'll be speaking at SPTechCon. And that is April 22nd through the 25th, and that's in San Francisco. So go ahead and sign up for that one, and I would love to see you there. So thanks, everybody. Once again, I went over. You may find it impossible to believe, but when I make my notes for this every week, I shoot for 30 minutes. I don't think I've had a netcast that was 30 minutes or less in probably 3 years. Lori Gowan in the chat room will be speaking at SPTechCon as well. Can't beat that. So come out to that. But thank you, everybody. I apologize for going over. I will see you next week. Hopefully, I got a couple of blog posts in the hopper, some stuff I'm working on for next week. So hopefully 174 will be great. Speaking of PowerShell, last week somebody mentioned that I should have a team for the Power scripting games, the winter scripting games, that hopefully will be next year. It's not a bad idea. I kind of like it. So I looked into it. You can have a team of 2 to 6 people, and Lord knows I need all the help I can get, so I would have the full team of 6. So I will probably at some point be recruiting 5 people to be on my team with me. So if that's something that you're interested in, keep that in mind. I don't know exactly how I'm going to set all that up, but I'm very much considering having a scripting games team. So hopefully that'll be a lot of fun. So thanks, everybody. Have a good week, and I will see you all back here with Netcast 174. Thanks, and have a good night.